So today is the first session of the 7 series sessions that are starting around TouchStone training. This is a unique session just because a few months ago we had a release of our new dashboard, which you're looking at right now, and a lot of the old recordings don't include these new features and don't include the dashboard at all. So this will be kind of an exciting new thing for people, for those of you who haven't been using it yet. So the format of the sessions are going to be, we'll cover the topic that is described in the webinar, and then at the end I'll also do what's called the process of the week. And what that is it's a library process from our process library that I've decided to highlight. So I'll show you where it is in the library, and then I'll discuss it with you and talk about what it is and, more importantly, how to use it. So at the end of every session, you're going to get this added bonus, which is the process of the week. All right. Anybody's go-to webinar panel that's in your way, you can click the orange arrow and it will condense it to the right, or you can always drag it off to the side of your screen as well if it's in the middle of your view screen. So what we're talking today about is just basically the TouchStone interface, kind of how it's organized, what are some of the basic features here on the dashboard, and then most importantly, the main subject is the 4 key functions. So I'll be discussing technically how to use the features within the 4 key functions, but most importantly, how to think about it, how to build it, what are some techniques and strategies for building out your 4 key functions. So this screen is called the dashboard, and this is what everybody sees when they first log into TouchStone. The dashboard is customized by user. So if you've set up users to your system, or you are a user, not the key account holder of the system, you're going to see your control panel right here if you've been assigned one. And if you're a manager, you're going to see this area called Management Review. If you see nothing on the dashboard, it's because a control panel hasn't been assigned to you yet. So we'll go over how the control panels are assigned. But this is the dashboard. The dashboard is like the front end of TouchStone. So the dashboard is where you go to access your processes and use them and manage them. So the idea of when you document a process is that it's implemented and used. So within this control panel function, there's features that allow processes to be completed. If a process has a checklist in it, say, or a form that can be filled out and saved back to TouchStone. So this is about the using and the implementation of processes right here. In the management area, managers can use the dashboard and management review to track training information of their employees, to view the things they're completing in TouchStone, to mark employees as trained in processes. So managers use this feature of the dashboard to make sure their employees are using their processes and to keep training information. In the upper right-hand corner of the screen, the first thing I want to show you is this link called Resource Center. So it's bolded in the dashboard, but it's always here in the upper right-hand corner of any screen inside of TouchStone. So when I click this, it's going to open in a second window, and this is called the Resource Center. So this is like a do-it-yourself place inside of TouchStone. There's a user guide section, which has a step-by-step for everything in TouchStone. So all the features that I'm going to go over today, everything that could possibly happen in TouchStone is listed here inside the user guides. And when you select a subject area, you're going to see screenshots. Sometimes you'll even see little snippets of videos like this one right here, and then a how-to and a step-by-step. Next to that is the webinar section. So in the webinars section, you're always going to have access to the latest technical trainings. This is the old series that happened a few months ago. We update these with the new series or the new webinar every time it occurs. So this one will be replaced after today. Everyone who's registered for the technical training, you're also going to get emailed the webinar that occurred, whether you attend or not, but you can also access them here. There's also strategy webinars here, which are useful. Some of these are great for if you just need some inspiration. This one's pretty good on how to build an organization strategy, how to build an organization chart. And there's a lot of other things in here. There's how-to videos that you'll see here. Everything, all the process of the weeks that we've done over the last few years are all here listed out. So you can find things related to strategy and management. These are all here. And these are short little 15-minute videos on that particular library process. Another key thing is up here under support. So if you want to get a hold of us, this is a quick and easy way to do it. You can always email whoever you've been in contact with before, and that person will get back to you. Or you can also go here, contact support, and put in a question right here in these fields. If you want to report a problem, so this is if you have a feature request or there's some kind of issue you're experiencing, this is a good way to get that dealt with quickly. You also have access to register for our free trainings. You're all here, so you've already registered for the live technical training. We also have TouchStone University, which occurs, I think it's 2 times a month, and it's shorter classes. They're about a half an hour, and they're just like best practices. But this is a good place to come to if you want to talk to someone live time or hear what the latest things are that are going on. So this is the Resource Center. Again, you can always access it here in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. To the right of that is the user settings. So here when I go to user settings, it's going to show me my username and password, the one that I'm logged in as. So if you're a user to TouchStone and you want to reset your username and your password, that's the place that you go to do it. You can also access account administration in the upper right-hand corner. So this is where the users are set up for your system. There's going to be a whole webinar on this and how to use it. But this is where you go to create users if you're an administrator, as well as set control panels. So on that dashboard screen, if you don't see a control panel there that hasn't been set up for your company yet, or you haven't yet done it, you go to account administration and you can access or create the ability to assign the control panels. Also under this little person button here is the log out. TouchStone will stay active on your computer for 5 hours with no activity. So once you log in the morning, say, if you do nothing in the system, you don't click on anything, it will stay open for 5 hours, and then it times out, it shuts itself off. It's good to get into the habit of logging out at the end of the day. We want TouchStone to kind of mimic software, so you're not having to log in and log out all the time. But at the end of the day, it's going to time you out eventually, but it's just kind of good protocol, like you would save a Word document and then close out Word, that you would just log out of TouchStone. This little wheel icon gives you access to the user settings, account administration, that whole area. Over to the left, this is the left-hand navigation, which is new to our in our new release. You access the 4 key functions from the dashboard right here. You can get to the organization chart. You can get to reports. So reports, the reports feature allows you to run reports of what's going on in these 2 functions. So if you're completing things in a control panel, or you have employees completing things in management review, you can run a report of those things. And then the search button. For those of you who have been underway in TouchStone for quite a while, the search is a useful feature, because if you forget, where something is, you can't find it on the 4 functions, can't remember if it's even in there, searching is a quick way to find things. So let's talk about the 4 key functions. So I'm going to start here. Now that I've clicked into TouchStone past the dashboard, I'm now at the back end of it. So that's a good way to think about it. The dashboard here takes you to the front end where things are used. And then in the back end where we are now is where you build and organize your processes. So inside of TouchStone, these 2 key tools, the 4 functions in the org chart, are the main tools that are used to build and organize the procedures or processes. The 4 functions is a place where the list of all of your processes is kept. So every process that you would put into TouchStone is organized into one of these 4 key functions, and you can always go here to find and see what you have, all your processes. The org chart is a picture of positions of your employees, the people. So the organization chart is structured by department, hopefully. We're in the next session, we're going to get into what is good organization strategy and how to build a good organization chart. But this is the employees or the people within your company. How these 2 tools come together is we link processes from the 4 functions list here to these boxes on the organization chart. So if I click a box on the chart here, you're going to see a whole list of processes. These processes have come from the 4 functions list from one place or another. So that's how these 2 tools interface with each other. The master list is here, the people are here, all the employees, and then we assign every process from the 4 functions to boxes on the chart, which create what we call a job description, and looks like this. When you select a box from the job description, you select a process, it takes you here to the documentation for that process. And you can always see from this breadcrumb trail where this process lives on the 4 functions. So it's in the guiding the business function, employee management subfunction, and it's here. It's also been linked to this job description for the manager of marketing and sales. So that's how the 2 tools are organized, how they work together. So let's go back here to the 4 key functions. So these 4 key functions are subjects within your business. And when we look at these 4 areas together, we see everything inside the business. We see the structure of the business. One of the great things about building out your processes and working in TouchStone is that you start to see the business in a different way. It's not just people running around doing work, issues being handled, jobs getting done. When you look at it from this perspective, you're analyzing it like an entrepreneur and you're saying, what does this business consist of? Practically, what is it if we were to put it in writing? And if you can remove yourself from the emotional side of what goes on in a business as a manager and as an owner and see it in this practical framework, then it allows you to build it. It allows you to really build it as if it was a thing and not just, mass chaos, which a lot of us feel. So with these 4 key areas, we see the business as a whole. As we define them, guiding the business is meant for these strategic and managerial processes. So this category, this function, is where all of those processes should be kept, things you use to guide the business. Getting is for marketing strategy, advertising, and sales. All the processes you use to get new business in the door. Doing is your operations. So this is the doing of the work. This is all the delivering of your products or services. Once something's sold here, it's delivered here. So all the processes for how you do your work are listed here in doing the business. Running is administration, finance, HR. It's all of the support processes, what you use to run your business. So these processes theoretically are in support of everything else, the other 3. When you select one of the 4 key functions, it then takes you to what we call sub-functions. So these are sub-functions, the black headers here. So I have one called sales, I have this one called advertising, this one called estimating, this one called sales management. And then the processes are listed inside of these sub-functions or sub-areas. So it's like a big outline. You've got the 4 key above, and then we drill down and we see sub-areas or sub-functions, and then we see the processes. It's like a big hierarchy. So let's go over just some of these basic features up here. When you select one of the 4 functions, first of all, you're going to see what function you're on because it'll always be listed here. The remaining 3 are here. So I can get to guiding and running and doing just by clicking these boxes if I want to, but I'm always seeing what I'm on because it's listed right up here. If you don't like the getting, doing, guiding, running terminology, you can change it by just clicking this little black edit pencil. So if you'd rather just call this sales or sales and marketing, sales and advertising, you can change it and hit save. And now you'll notice right up here, this is changed. And if I go back to the 4 functions, it's changed here. Make the TouchStone work for you. If the getting, doing, guiding, running terminology is confusing to you, change it to something that works for you. It's meant to be something that makes sense for you, and all of this is customizable so that it feels like you own it. The only thing I would recommend about this is to keep the general subject areas. So you wouldn't want to call this sales and call this advertising, because if you do that, you're going to run out of functions. You won't see the whole business as a whole. You're going to break it apart too much. So keep the general themes the same, but you can change these titles to whatever you want them to be. Right above here where it says subfunctions, this is how you control the subfunctions. So if I want to add a subfunction, I click here. I just put in the name of my function and I hit save. And then that subfunction is added right down here. They toggle from left to right. So they scatter from left to right, top to bottom. If I want to edit a function title, super easy as well. I just choose the one that I want to edit. I put it in the to field and then save, and then it will edit that title. So it's changed down here. You can also delete subfunctions quite easily. Delete. The only issue around this is it's not going to let you delete the ones that have processes in them. So you see how these are all grayed out? I can't delete those because they've already got processes in them. So if you want to delete a subfunction that has processes in them, you need to drag them over to another subfunction. So move them and then empty that subfunction, and then you can delete it. You can also reorder the subfunctions right here. So if you want to adjust the order, they do still continue to toggle from left to right, but you can move whatever ones to the top or the bottom that you want. So that is the subfunctions. All processes that you've listed here in the subfunctions can be moved just by dragging and dropping them. So I'm just holding my left mouse click down. I'm moving this up and moving this down, left to right, to adjust the order. If I want to take a process and move it from one function to another, I can do that by dragging and dropping as well. So we're in this one called sales and advertising right now. If I have a process that I want to move away from this function to another function, like guiding the business, I would just drag it up to that function, wait till it's on top, let go. And now I'm looking at the subfunctions within guiding the business, which I'm attempting to move this to. So I choose the subfunction that I want that process to be in, and I hit move. Now TouchStone has moved that process from this subfunction into guiding the business into the subfunction I chose. So this is, again, how you take processes and move them out of one subfunction into a whole nother function. Drag and drop. Next toolbar item over to the right here. This toolbar item will allow you to print what's on the screen. So you're going to see this, it's called the export arrow. You're going to see this all throughout TouchStone. Everywhere in TouchStone we have the export arrow. And it performs the same functions wherever it exists. You can print what's on the screen. You can export to Word what's on the screen, so it's writable. You can print it to a PDF or you can email it. So these print features, again, everywhere you see this little export arrow, which is everywhere in TouchStone, you'll have these same 4 options: print, export to a Word, or print to a PDF or email. We make printing easy inside of TouchStone, and we realize that that's important because people don't want to feel like they are married to the TouchStone forever. Obviously, we hope you keep it. But if you do decide not to, you can export your information quite easily, even in a writable Word format. Having said that, one of the key benefits of TouchStone is that everything is paperless. It's in the cloud. It's updated all the time. What's in TouchStone is the most current version because that's all that exists. It's all electronic. It's all accessible for wherever you have an internet connection. So the benefit of that is that this accessibility, the organization of it, and that it's all up to date and current. The minute you start exporting things, you're creating multiple versions of those things, and you're moving away from one of the key benefits of TouchStone, which is that it's all paperless and current. So it's just something to think about. As we all move to more of an electronic age, which we are living in right now, the move away from paper, I think, is an important one to think about. So you can get into habits and teach your employees habits that will facilitate this. So for example, if I wanted someone to go look at my getting the business function right here and see what I've done on it, rather than exporting it and emailing it to them or printing it and putting it on their desk, I would just say, log into TouchStone and go to getting the business. Look what I've done. Or if I want them to look at a process or a work plan, say, that I've been working on, so here's a work plan, rather than going and exporting this and emailing it and say, hey, look at this work plan I built, rather I would go up here to the URL, highlight it, right-click, copy, and then I'd email that to them, and I'd say, hey, log into TouchStone and look at this work plan. Now they're looking at the most current version of it. Now I haven't created a second copy. I haven't printed anything. They're going right into TouchStone and seeing it. As long as they're past the username and password screen and they have access to this process, they can click this link and it'll take them right to the process I was referring to. So remember things like that. Okay, so a few more thoughts on sub-functions. Sub-functions are meant to organize your processes. That's their primary purpose. Inside of getting the business, which we're in now, some common sub-functions are going to be sales, advertising, estimating if you do estimating, sales management. That's another common one. Inside the Resource Center, we list out these common sub-functions in case you're wanting them, but you can't remember or write down everything I'm saying now. But those are pretty common: sales, advertising, estimating, sales management. Inside of guiding the business, some common sub-functions are going to be strategy. It's an important sub-function for all of your business strategy processes. Employee management, another common sub-function. So all the processes you use to manage employees. Board of directors, that's another one. So whether you have board meetings or not, this idea of the entrepreneurs sitting down and thinking about the strategy and the vision of the business once a year is a really good one. So having a board, even a theoretical board, is a good thing. And then there are procedures or processes for how the board operates. Training, that's another sub-function that's common here inside of guiding the business. So this doesn't mean you can't have more than this, but these four are pretty common things that I see generally inside of guiding the business. Inside of running the business, remember this is the support processes that support the whole company. Finance, that's a pretty common one. Financial management. So finance is going to be your basic bookkeeping procedures, payables, receivables, invoicing. Financial management is more the higher level things, budgeting, cash flow, things like that. Human resources, another common sub-function inside of running the business. So human resources is the policy-driven stuff behind having employees. Employee management, we have over in guiding the business, things you use to guide and manage employees. Human resources is more the policy, recruiting, hiring, employee handbook, things like that. IT, this is your computer processes. So if you have other software, other web tools that you use, you want to have how-tos for these computer processes. Sometimes with these like a CRM or a QuickBooks how-to, if your software that you're using has really good tutorials, you can just make links to those tutorials within these processes. But if you've customized that software and you use it in a specific way, then you're going to have to build procedures or processes on how to use those. So next, doing the business. So here in doing the business, this is where the sub-functions get customized by industry. So inside of guiding, getting, running, I've said, these are common because most businesses do the same types of things more or less. The way that they do it isn't the same, but the subjects of what they do are the same. Here inside of doing the business, this is where it gets customized by industry. So in this area, you want to think, what are the main categories of work within your operations? If you produce something, then you'll have a production subfunction. If you're a service business, then you'll have a service subfunction. Most businesses need a client service or customer service subfunction, and things in there like client satisfaction or customer complaints, things like that. If you deal with materials or equipment, then you'll want to have a material subfunction. Or an equipment and tools subfunction, and then the processes within that related to how to run and operate your equipment or your vehicles. The production management or service management would be another good subfunction. So those would be the processes for how to manage what you're producing or what you're servicing. If you deliver multiple services, then you could have multiple subfunctions. Or you deliver multiple products, you'd have multiple subfunctions. So brainstorm this and think, what are some good sub areas or subfunctions to help organize what happens in your operations? You're doing the business. If you get stumped on this and you just can't think of good subfunctions, we've seen every industry known to man with a TouchStone account. So you can always go to the Resource Center and go to Contact Support and say, hey, do you have any example subfunctions for a retail business or whatever your business is? And a lot of times we can just send you some examples of things that we've seen before, some typical subfunctions. Okay, so those are the subfunctions. So the first step in building your 4 key functions would be to go in and create the subfunctions. Pretty easy. Should take not very much time at all. The next step is to add processes. So to add processes, it's very easy. You just go to this icon called Add New Process. So here I would click on the process title field, and then I'd put in the name of the process. Then I choose the subfunction that it goes in with the subfunction dropdown, and then I hit Save. So easy as that. That's how you add a process. Go add new process, put the name in, hit save. Processes, there's a few things to be thinking about. One is really pay attention to your protocol for the titles. So here you'll notice I've got capital for every word. That's typical. What you don't want to do is do lowercase for every letter and then have other people going in and doing capitals, and then sometimes you do capitals and sometimes you do lowercase. It just looks messy. So normally when you put in a title, every word would have a capital letter. Also, when you're putting in your titles, think of short, clear process titles. So like these: client satisfaction, clocking hours, scheduling, cleaning. Short, specific titles. If you have a sentence or a phrase that's your title, then think about that sentence or phrase and try to name what it is you're referring to. Once you've added a process like this one, if I click it, right here in this field underneath the title is what we call the objective. So this says to ensure all customers are satisfied and if not, determine why and provide solution. So this is the objective. This is where the sentence or the phrase, the description of what's in it exists or should live. We wouldn't want the title of this process to be ensure all customers are satisfied. It's not a title, it's a sentence or a phrase. So if you've done it that way, then try to adjust it. You can cut that title out just by clicking and then paste it into here, and then think of a name, a short, specific title. I'm going to go back now. Another thing to be thinking about with your process titles is how big that title is, or the extent of the title, you might say. So what I'm about to describe is a bit of an art on creating your 4 functions, but I'll give you some suggestions. So we've got these categories that are in a hierarchy. So the 4 key are right here. Everything related to marketing and sales is in here. So this is a big subject area. When I click on this, then we've got the sub-functions. So the sub-functions are different from the function title. This is everything related to marketing, sales, sales management, all of it. So the sub-functions are categories within that, like sales, like advertising. The processes are the specific work that occurs to get sales or to do advertising. So we wouldn't want a process title called sales, right? Because it's too broad. There's too many things that happen within sales. Sales is the sub-function. And then the process is more something specific to sales, like how to set the first appointment, all the product knowledge that you need, how to do a contract. Under advertising, how to do press releases, how to do referral development. So all of these are processes that occur inside of advertising. So think about that when you're structuring your process titles. You want to think, what is the specific work that occurs? When you select a process, like strategic alliances, let's choose this one. Oh, that's a bad one. Let's go to referral development. So inside of a process, and we're going to have a long session on how to use the process tools, but inside of a process, you can have multiple work plans. So this is where it gets a little tricky, and it's a bit of an art. I have a process called referral development. Well, I generate referrals from 2 different sources, one from clients and one from alliances. So inside of this process, I have both of those work plans. One for how to generate referrals from clients and one how to generate referrals from alliances. So the sub areas of this process are defined as work plans within it. So this trail can kind of show you the hierarchy again. 4 key functions, those uppermost 4 key areas. Sales and marketing or getting the business, that's the function. Advertising is the sub-function, so that's the sub area within this. Referral development is the process. And then within referral development, we have 2 sub areas or work plans, 2 work plans, one for clients, one for how to generate referrals from clients, and one for how to generate referrals from alliances. Let me show you another example. Here I'm going inside of running the business, which is a big function, big category. Within this, I have the sub-function of finance, still a big category, but not as big as running, because running includes all of this. I have a process called accounts payable. So the result of this is to pay the bills. When I select accounts payable, within this, I have multiple work plans on all the different ways that we pay bills. We pay bills with checks, with invoices, we have special invoices. So everything related to accounts payable is inside of this process called accounts payable. Now, this categorizing or putting together of like subjects is something I would recommend for this reason. If I had process titles for all of these, then my 4 functions list is going to be way bigger than if I combine them. So you can imagine on the finance list, if I had a sub-function called accounts payable, and then I had all those processes listed, I've just created probably 5 times more processes. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just easier to find and use things when they're combined. It's less confusing. So when you can, combine like work. Keep everything related to accounts payable inside of accounts payable. Combine things that are the same. All right. Let's talk next about the library. And I have a question about the library. This is from John. He's saying the library seems to be related to a service business. Are all of these sub-functions and processes available in the library? Are all of these? I think he's referring to my doing the business area. So, okay, so let me start at the beginning and then I'll answer your question, John. Every function has its own library. So guiding the business as a library, getting, doing, running. When I click on a function and I go add from process library, now I'm going to see all the processes within the doing the business library, because this is where I am. I'm in doing the business, add from library, general processes. Now I'm seeing a list of all of these processes that are related to doing. The doing the business library is probably the least helpful of all four of the libraries. And it's because of the fact that doing the business operations is specific by industry. So the things that a retail business would do for operations are different from what a manufacturing business would do, or from what a construction business would do, or from what a service business would do. You're right, John, in that the Doing the Business library has a lot of things in it related to a service business because in service businesses, it's easier to say it's easier to find similar work, I guess is a good way to say it. So one service business to another tends to do client intake or tends to deal with client requests, things like that. So you're going to see, a lot things probably more in the library that would be related to service businesses. But having said that, there are other things like customer general things like customer complaints, customer appreciation. There's project type things, service enhancements, quality control. That's another one, purchasing. So having said all this about the Doing the Business library, we do have industry specific libraries, not for every industry. And some of them, the two that are free are the construction library. So if you're a construction business and you haven't been given access to the industry specific library for construction, then send me an email right away and I'll link it for you. We try to do that right away when you first sign up. We have a insurance library, so any personal and commercial insurance library, so for insurance businesses. We have a property management library for property management companies. So those three industry-specific libraries are free for users. Other industries, we have resellers who have built libraries and sell them. So we have one for landscapers, we have one for law businesses, lawyers, and there's a few others. So those are sold by our resellers and would be, if you were interested in those industry-specific libraries, we would put you in touch with that reseller and they would sell them to you. So that's the Doing the Business area. In guiding, getting, and running, the libraries here are pretty much boilerplate processes, best practices processes that are related to all industries and all businesses. So to access the library, just to repeat it, you go add from process library, general processes, and then you're going to see a list of all the library processes. So some of these are grayed out, like this one, because I've already got it in my demo account here. So it's already listed. Once you've added a process, TouchStone won't let you add it again because you already have it. So that's why it would be grayed out. So if you want to add a process, you just fill in the box next to the title here, put it into the correct sub-function. You can always drag and drop it, but you might as well put it into the correct one initially. And then I just hit save. So now TouchStone's taking this employee coaching and training process and it puts it onto this list and adds it to my system. Once you've added a library process, if you select it, then you're going to be able to go over here and see the content that we have for it. So here's some work plans on how to do employee coaching and training. There's scripts, there's a custom form in here. So this content is meant to kind of give you a head start with this, give you some ideas on how to run this type of process. Oftentimes, the library processes need to be edited. You need to make them your own. You're not just going to be able to pull them over and use them as is. So again, it's meant to give you a head start. If you pull a library process and you look at it and you decide, well, this just isn't something I'm going to use right now, it isn't what I thought it was, take it and drag it to the delete folder right here and let go. And then hit delete. So now I've just deleted that library process, but if I decide I made a mistake 6 months from now and I want to go back and see it again, it put it back into the library right here. So any library process that you pull over into your account and then you delete, TouchStone will put it back into the library so you can download it again. And this is just, a good thing to remember, because sometimes people go crazy and download every library process there is, and then you've just got all these library processes cluttering things up. You're not really using them. You don't know what they're for. And that's not a good situation, because it just makes it more confusing than it needs to be. So make sure you go and really scrutinize every library process and then put it back into the library, or delete it if it's not something you feel like you're going to use. Think of the 6-month mark. If it's not something you're going to implement, edit, and use within 6 months, and when I say use, I mean train people and make sure they're following it, then delete it for now. You can always go 6 months from now and pull it down again, but there's no reason to have it there kind of making more processes than need to be. So every process has its own library. Sales and marketing, this has got some great processes in it for consultative sales, needs assessment, follow-up. There's all kinds of advertising things in this library as well. In the running the business library, you'll find some great HR things. Easy things to implement, like employee onboarding or vacation requests, recruiting and hiring. Everything you're seeing in my account as I'm toggling through, these are all library processes with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. So these two, for example, I've just customized to make the point about, how you need to have how-tos for your software. But all these ones that you're seeing here are all in the library. So great stuff in HR, for HR inside of the running the business library. Inside of guiding the business, we've got some really cool strategy things that you can use. So strategic target development. The system of the week, which I'm going to start in a few minutes here, is going to be key performance indicators. This is a great library process, which we'll go over today. Great employee management things, so performance review, one-on-one meetings, discipline things. So check out the stuff in the library. If you've been kind of struggling with how do I get TouchStone implemented, how do I just do one thing, how do I get people to use it, the quickest way is to go pull a great library process, even performance review, something as simple as that, and start using it. Get your managers to start using it in TouchStone. Or one-on-one meetings. Just simply do agenda forms in the one-on-one meetings. So getting people to use TouchStone, use the new dashboard functionality, which is, has been vastly improved. Get TouchStone kind of moving in your company. And then the next time you say, we have this problem, let's go build a process for it. People are already integrated into TouchStone. It's going to be much easier to say, okay, let's sit down and build a new process. So use those library processes and implement them. All right, so just a few words on the color coding here, just for people who don't know what that means. When I add a new process, like I just type in a brand new process for the first time, I save it, that process is going to be red right down here. And it's red because there's nothing in it. It's just a title right now. So that's what the red means. I'm just going to drag this to the top. So red means there's nothing in it, not started. It's just a title. The minute I put something in this process, so I go here and let's say add a work plan, now there's something in it. I've just started to build it. So if I go back here and we look at this process title, it's going to be blue now because there's something in it. So in process, it's started. Somebody started to build it. When I'm finished with the process, like the documentation's done, it's been approved, everyone's good to go, the trainings, you're going to give the training and implement it, you can fill in this box that says process documentation completed. So that's going to turn the process title black with the check mark. So that's what the color coding means. You see it's now black with a check mark. So red, not started. Blue means it's in progress. Somebody's working on it. And then black means it's done. When a process has been put in the public folder, it is indicated with a P if it hasn't been done yet, like this one's in process still, or it's indicated with a green check mark if it's been marked as complete. So that's the difference here, the green check mark and the P. Here on the dashboard, you can access the public folder. So these are public processes. These are processes that I've marked as public. What public means is that everybody who has access to TouchStone has access to these processes. So they live here on the dashboard. Anybody who logs in that has a username and password can access these processes. When they go to them inside the public folder on the dashboard, they're seeing the content that's been built in them. They can't edit or change anything from this view. They just see what's there. So if I'm doing time management and I'm going to go fill out a time log, I can click the time log and now these fields are all live and I can fill this out, but I can't edit the content of this or change it in any way. I'm just using it. So put processes in the public folder that are company-wide, like they're the accountability of everyone, not just one or two people. Everyone in the business needs to have access to them because they use them. So health and safety things, employee handbook, oftentimes HR things are here, like new employee introduction and orientation, things that people lose a lot, and they're always asking you, well, where's this, where's that, how do I take a vacation? So things like that, put on your public folder, because then you can start to say, log into TouchStone is right there on the dashboard. So within this public folder, or through the 4 functions, you can mark things as public. So if I go down to this new process again, right here is the box to put it in the public folder. So if I click this, it's going to be in the public folder. And someone's asking about unmarking things. So these 2 fields are manual. So just like I clicked this to put it in the public folder, if I have the correct rights to do this, I can uncheck it, and now it's not in the public folder anymore. I can check it again tomorrow, and now it's in the public folder. So that's what I mean. It's all manual. Same as complete. If I uncheck this box, now if we go back here, this is going to be blue again because I've unmarked it as complete. So those 2 are manual. If I was to empty this process, so delete that work plan, it would turn red again. So that's the only thing that's automatic. When something's inside of it, it knows that TouchStone knows it needs to be blue. So a reason that you would unmark something as complete is if it needed to change. So you needed to be updated and you wanted people to know it needed to be updated, you can unmark it as complete. When you're documenting your processes, which is like an ongoing thing, when you assign a process to someone for someone to work on, I think a good thing to do is to select that process. It would be blue or red because it's not done yet. Then you can go to the title and you can put the person's initials in that are supposed to do it, and then you can give it a due date. The due date is key, and then save it. So now when I look at this title, I'm always going to see whoever's looking at it, whether it's on a job description or not. I'm working on it, and this is the due date. So this is a way to kind of do project management inside of TouchStone. I could even go up and search for SB or search for that date, and I'd see a list of everything with SB in it with the dates. So if you're in the midst of trying to mark your processes as complete, as we all are, then think about doing something like this because it holds people accountable and you know what's going on all the time because you know that there's a tentative due date for it. All right, so that is the 4 key functions. So just kind of recapping, when you're working in the 4 key functions, first step is to define your sub-functions. If you've had TouchStone for a while and you haven't done this yet, create your sub-functions. Organize your processes into categories. It just makes it easier to find things. It also makes it easier to see what's missing, what processes are missing. So define your sub-functions. Go to the library and add down things from the library that you think would be useful if you haven't done that yet. If you have library processes that you downloaded years ago or months ago and they're just sitting there doing nothing, you don't know what to do with them, if it's not a priority, you know it. So just remove them. Put them back into the library for now. If you are interested in what I said about just try to implement something, then look at those library processes and ask yourself, what can we implement like right now? It's easier because you've got a certain amount of documentation already that came from the library. So sit down with your team of managers. Say, we're going to start doing performance reviews this way. These are the due dates. This is how we do it. These are the tasks. These are the forms. Let's implement it. Let's do it. Then go and add what's missing. Add processes. Add new process. So add the processes that are missing. Think about your titles, short, specific, clear titles. If you've made them as run-on sentences or they're long, the minute it loops around, and those of you who have done this know what I mean, the title, if it's longer than this, it's going to return it to the second line. It's too long of a title. It just makes it harder to see it, harder to know what it is. So name it. This is another great activity to really make your business practical and to see things as clear, delineated processes rather than just a bunch of work that people do. Name what it is. So build out your 4 key functions. This is a great first step in TouchStone. I know I look at accounts all the time, and sometimes I see people who have gone in and like just listed 4 processes here, or all they've focused on is this, and they haven't done the other functions. If you haven't done your other functions, consider doing it. It's not that much time, and it really helps for you to see the big picture. Like you see everything together. You see all the processes. You can say to yourself, we advertise this way, and then when a sale comes in, this is how we sell it, and then it gets handed off to operations, and so then this process ends and this one begins, and when the handoff happens in operations, then it goes to ordering the material. So you can start to see the workflow, and then the sale gets billed over here by finance, and then everyone meets to talk about it. So you start to see these connections between your processes, and you've listed those. So consider going in and reanalyzing your 4 key functions if you've had TouchStone for a while.